There is a very specific type of exhaustion that I think a lot of people listening to this right now will just instantly recognize.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and it is not, the tiredness you feel after a really grueling week at work, or like the physical fatigue you get after helping a friend move a couch up 3 flights of stairs.
Right, yeah.
It is something much heavier. And in the stack of sources we're looking at today, there's this one line that just perfectly captures it. The authors describe this phenomenon that results in, and I quote here, a bone-deep tiredness that a weekend cannot touch.
Man, that phrase, it really just stops you in your tracks, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because, I mean, we are so culturally conditioned to believe that rest is just this mechanical equation.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you sleep 8 hours and drink some water, well, your energy levels just reset.
Just drink some water and take a nap. Right?
Exactly. But that biological model completely breaks down when the exhaustion, when it isn't coming from your schedule, but from your daily lived experience.
Which brings us to what we're talking about today. We are looking at this fascinating clinical brief from Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC.
Yeah, they're a telehealth practice.
Right, a really comprehensive telehealth therapy practice based down in Georgia. And we are pairing their structural model with some deeply insightful clinical notes that unpack a really widely misunderstood psychological condition.
It's heavily misunderstood.
Sure. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore the hidden reality of racial trauma, which is clinically referred to as race-based traumatic stress.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look at why the mental health field so frequently misdiagnoses it, and crucially, how modern therapeutic practices like CHC are fundamentally changing their structures to actually help.
Which is so needed right now.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I think we need to start by defining what this bone-deep tiredness actually is. I mean, you can't treat what you don't accurately name, right?
Yeah. Right, exactly. To understand the treatment, we really have to look at the mechanics of the condition itself. So race-based traumatic stress, or RBTS, it's defined as the cumulative psychological impact of racism-related stressors.
Cumulative being the key word there.
Huge keyword. This isn't usually like an isolated incident. It is a compounding phenomenon. So sure, it certainly includes direct discrimination, but it also heavily involves microaggressions.
Like the everyday stuff?
Yeah, those subtle everyday slights or invalidations just happen in the workplace or, at the grocery store.
Right.
And importantly, it includes vicarious exposure.
Meaning, you don't even have to be the direct target of the event to actually experience the trauma of it.
Precisely.
Like you're watching the news or you're seeing distressing events happen in your community, you're scrolling through social media, and your nervous system is just reacting to all of that.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the clinical overlap with post-traumatic stress disorder, right, PTSD, and how the brain processes that vicarious threat. Because when you look at the symptom picture for someone experiencing race-based traumatic stress, you see hypervigilance.
Like always being on edge.
Exactly. From a neurological standpoint, your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, it's essentially stuck in the on position.
Just constantly scanning the environment.
Constantly. You also see intrusive thoughts. There is emotional numbing, where the brain basically just dampens its capacity to feel because, well, the cognitive load is just too overwhelming.
It's trying to protect itself.
Yeah. And you see somatic complaints, meaning the psychological stress physically manifests in the body.
Oh, like physical pain.
Yeah. Tension headaches, gastrointestinal issues, elevated heart rates. The body is essentially absorbing the environment.
But I'm looking at these clinical notes, and there seems to be a massive difference in the actual source of the trauma compared to what we traditionally think of.
How so?
Well, I mean, if we think about classical PTSD, the cultural narrative usually points to a singular past traumatic event.
Right, like a singular anchor point.
Yeah, a car accident, a natural disaster, maybe a combat situation. The event happened, it is over, and the therapy is about processing that past event so you can, recognize that you're actually safe in the present. But with RBTS, the stressor isn't just in the rearview mirror. It is ongoing. It is in the present. And it's often like completely impossible to avoid in your daily life.
You've hit on the exact reason why standard trauma protocols often misfire here.
They just don't fit.
They don't. You are not processing a past event that is definitively over. You are trying to regulate a nervous system that is still actively navigating an environment that continues to present these stressors.
So it's chronic, not acute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is chronic rather than acute. Your brain isn't misinterpreting a past threat as a present danger. It is accurately identifying a present ongoing threat.
Wow. I was thinking about how to visualize this cumulative effect because I think it can be hard for people who don't experience it to understand why it is so debilitating.
Analogies usually help with this.
Right. So imagine you are wearing a backpack, and every single day someone walks up and drops a tiny pebble into your backpack.
Okay, a pebble.
Yeah, a microaggression here, maybe a piece of distressing news there, and an uncomfortable encounter at a bank. Just one pebble. Now, a single pebble weighs almost nothing, right?
Right, it's tiny.
So if an onlooker saw you wince when that one pebble was added today, they might think you were completely overreacting. They'd say, "Why are you so upset? It's literally just a tiny pebble."
Right, they just see today's interaction.
Exactly. But what they don't see, and what the clinical notes point out, is that you have been carrying this backpack for years. Decades, maybe. The weight is absolutely crushing. Your knees are buckling. It is not about the one pebble today.
It's about the thousands of pebbles you were already carrying.
Yes.
That is a highly accurate way to picture it, particularly how the outside world views the reaction. And this dynamic is precisely why the medical and mental health fields have historically been those confused onlookers, only looking at today's single pebble.
They totally missed the backpack.
Yeah. They completely miss it. Because the symptoms present as exhaustion, and because the individual stressors might seem minor to someone who doesn't carry that specific backpack, well, the medical field falls into this massive trap.
This diagnosis.
Yeah. They misdiagnose it as mere burnout or general stress.
Okay, I want to push back on the clinical response here. Because if I go into an office carrying the crushing weight of systemic trauma, but a professional diagnoses me with just burnout,
Right.
and they tell me to just take a bubble bath, practice better sleep hygiene, manage my calendar better, doesn't that actually make the trauma worse?
Oh, it absolutely does.
I mean, it feels like it entirely invalidates the reality of the patient.
It exacerbates the issue, and the mechanics of why it makes it worse are crucial to understand here.
Break that down for me.
So standard burnout treatment often relies on cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Right, very common.
Very common. And a core component of CBT is identifying and correcting cognitive distortions, essentially teaching the patient that their perception of a threat is exaggerated.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, because with race-based traumatic stress, the threat isn't a cognitive distortion. It is an objective reality.
Right.
So when a clinician applies burnout interventions, they are inadvertently gaslighting the patient.
Wow.
They're telling the patient's nervous system, you are overreacting. And this actually reinforces the hypervigilance because the client now realizes they are unsafe and unseen, even in the therapeutic space.
That is wild. It's like telling someone with a broken leg that they just need to change their mindset about walking.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
We are essentially using the wrong tool for the job. Treating complex systemic trauma as if it were a simple scheduling problem or a lack of self-care entirely misses the core wound.
You cannot meditate your way out of a systemic stressor.
No, you can't. And what happens is the client leaves feeling like they have failed at therapy, when in reality, the therapeutic model failed them.
Which naturally brings up what happens when the person seeking help actually does recognize they're dealing with trauma rather than just burnout.
Right? They know what they're dealing with.
Yeah. But even when they brave the vulnerability of seeking professional help for that trauma, they often hit a massive brick wall inside the therapy room itself. The sources define this as the cultural match problem.
The cultural match problem.
Anyway, yeah.
This occurs when a clinician does not share or fundamentally does not comprehend the client's cultural context and daily lived reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Or maybe I should say, here's where it gets incredibly frustrating from a patient perspective.
Very frustrating.
Imagine you finally make the appointment, right? You sit down on the couch, the clock is ticking. You mention a specific stressor, say, a coded microaggression at work where you were passed over for a promotion,
Right.
or a community event that triggered your hypervigilance. And instead of the therapist guiding you through processing that trauma, they pause and ask, "Are you sure it was about race? Maybe your boss was just having a bad day."
And right there, the dynamic shifts.
Suddenly, you find yourself having to give a 20-minute sociology lecture to explain why what happened was actually harmful.
Exactly. The session gets completely derailed by the need for translation.
Translation, that's a great word for it.
The client has to translate their reality into terms the therapist can accept and understand. And physiologically, this is disastrous for trauma recovery.
Because they're in their head, not their body.
Yes. To heal trauma, The nervous system needs to feel safe enough to process deeply held emotions. But the moment the client has to become an educator or a defender of their own reality, they are forced out of their emotional processing brain and into a defensive cognitive state.
So the healing just stops.
The therapeutic work stops completely.
That is so sad. The very place a person goes to escape their exhaustion becomes just another environment where they have to work to justify their existence.
They're essentially paying to add another pebble to their own backpack.
Jeez. Paying for a pebble.
And this explains the historically low retention rates we see in these scenarios. The translation fatigue is simply too high.
People just quit going.
They do. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what actually works for this specific type of trauma is trauma-informed care from a clinician who does not require that translation.
They just get it.
Yes. The therapeutic space needs to be a place where the client's reality is treated as a foundational given, not a debate topic.
Right, no debating your reality.
When the therapist already understands the context, they can bypass the sociology lecture. They can use techniques like somatic experiencing, which is helping the client release physical tension, or narrative therapy, without questioning the validity of the narrative itself.
The notes heavily emphasize that this kind of authentic connection serves as a massive protective factor.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I understand why burnout treatments fail, and I definitely understand why the translation fatigue is so damaging. But I am kind of stuck on how you actually fix the cultural match issue on a systemic level.
The big challenge.
Right. Like, you can't just mandate that every therapist instantly understands every culture. You can't just mandate empathy. So how do we fix the system?
Well, you can't mandate it through a training module, which is what most traditional practices try to do.
A quick weekend seminar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you can fix it through structural redesign. And this is where coping and healing counseling, or CHC, offers a really compelling model.
They're doing something different.
Very different. They are not trying to train their way out of the problem. They are building a different kind of practice from the ground up. They have a diverse team of over 15 licensed therapists.
Over 15, wow.
Yeah, and that includes licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, and licensed marriage and family therapists.
Yeah, I see that list of credentials in the notes: LCSWs, LPCs, LMFTs. It's like an entire alphabet soup of licensed professionals.
It really is.
But beyond just having a lot of letters after their names, why does that specific mix matter for treating something like race-based traumatic stress?
Because complex trauma requires a multidisciplinary lens.
Oh, I see.
A licensed clinical social worker, for instance, is highly trained to view mental health through a systemic and environmental lens. They look at how institutions impact the individual.
Which is huge for systemic racism.
Huge. Meanwhile, a marriage and family therapist looks at generational trauma and family systems. And a professional counselor might focus deeply on individual cognitive and somatic processing.
So they can hit it from all sides.
Exactly. By bringing all these disciplines together, they can attack the trauma from multiple angles. But the most critical element, their core philosophy really, is that cultural competence is treated as a staffing decision, not a training module.
A staffing decision, not a training module. I love that.
It changes everything.
It does. You know, I look at that approach a bit like architecture. CHC is treating cultural competence like the actual concrete foundation of a house. You pour that first, and everything else is built on top of it. What a lot of traditional practices do is they build the whole house, realize it doesn't serve everyone, and then they try to just, slap a quick coat of culturally competent paint on the exterior at the very end to make it look nice.
Right, a diversity workshop.
Yeah, but the foundation is still wrong.
That analogy captures the clinical benefit perfectly. When the lived experience and deep understanding of these dynamics are already present the moment the staff is hired, the foundation is solid.
You don't have to worry about the paint?
No, you don't have to spend the first 4 sessions painting the house or giving sociology lectures. You can just walk in and live in it.
That's amazing.
Removing that burden of translation immediately accelerates the therapeutic process. The client can get straight to the healing, learning to stress tolerance, regulating their nervous system, and processing grief in an environment that is deeply validating and intentionally non-political.
And looking at their services, they specialize in precisely these heavy areas, right? Like trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression, grief, relationship issues, and severe stress.
All of it.
But let's look at the practical reality for a second here. Building the perfect foundation with the right staff is incredible, sure. But what happens if the people who need it most can't afford to walk through the door?
Right.
Or what if they live 3 hours away from the clinic? Trust and cultural match are massive emotional barriers, but logistical roadblocks will stop a healing journey before it even starts.
Logistical access is often the silent killer of mental health interventions.
Silent killer, yeah.
CHC addresses this by operating as a 100% IPA-compliant telehealth practice.
And high pay compliant, for anyone unfamiliar with the term, means they are legally bound to strict medical privacy standards. It's not just like a casual video call on your phone.
No, definitely not.
It is a secure, protected medical environment.
Exactly. The privacy builds the necessary trust. And because it's telehealth, they are not restricted by geographic location within their licensed state. They provide access to all 159 counties in Georgia.
All 159.
Yeah. When you think about the rural versus urban divide, that is a total game changer. Atlanta might have a high concentration of specialists, but a rural county might not have a single licensed therapist who understands this specific trauma.
Telehealth bridges that gap instantly.
Okay. It brings the specialist to your living room.
And then there's the financial side. The notes detail their financial accessibility model, and it seems built to actually get people in the door.
Very intentional.
They accept major commercial plans, and they accept Medicaid. For Medicaid patients, the copay is $0.
Is zero.
Which is incredible. And just as a quick note for you listening, we've put all of their contact information, their phone number, website, email directly into the show notes so you can find them easily without having to write anything down while you're driving right now.
Always helpful.
But I really want to pause on this cost aspect. The clinical notes brought up a point about money in therapy that completely shifted how I view accessibility.
This raises an important question regarding the true nature of barriers to healthcare. A profound insight from the source material is this. While cost is very often the stated barrier to entry for therapy.
It's what people say is the reason.
Exactly. It's a stated reason, but the real barrier is trust.
The real barrier is trust. Because if someone expects that going to therapy means they're going to be misunderstood, invalidated, misdiagnosed with just burnout, and forced to educate their therapist, well, I wouldn't pay a single dollar for that either.
Nobody wants to pay for that.
Right. No price is cheap enough if the service actively harms your nervous system. The cost becomes the polite, socially acceptable excuse we use to avoid a situation we fundamentally do not trust.
That is so true. People will invest their time and resources into things they trust will actually work. When a marginalized individual looks at the traditional mental health care system, they often see a history of being misunderstood. Therefore, the hesitation isn't just about the copay. It is a protective mechanism.
They're protecting themselves from another pebble.
Yes. So by clearly stating, we are diverse, we are culturally competent from the point of hiring, and we understand racial trauma, CHC is addressing the trust barrier first.
They lead with trust.
Once the trust barrier is lowered, accepting Medicaid and commercial insurance removes the final logistical hurdle. It really represents a paradigm shift from asking the client to fit into the therapy model to designing the therapy model to fit the reality of the client.
If I can just speak directly to you, the listener, for a second. If you or someone you know has been carrying that incredibly heavy backpack full of pebbles, and you have been avoiding therapy because you assumed it would be too expensive or that the office was too far away.
Or that they just wouldn't understand.
Yes. Or, most importantly, that the therapist just wouldn't get it and you'd have to explain yourself all over again. This model is intentionally designed to eliminate all three of those excuses. They are accessible everywhere in the state, they are structurally designed to be affordable, and they have built their foundation on getting it.
It is deeply hopeful, honestly, to see these structural solutions taking root. It proves that mental health care can actually adapt to the complexities of modern trauma.
It really is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a quick look back at the journey we've been on today. We started by recognizing the heavy, cumulative weight of race-based traumatic stress.
That bone-deep tiredness.
Exactly, that bone-deep tiredness that a weekend simply cannot fix. We explored the real dangers of the misdiagnosis trap, where treating complex systemic trauma with simple burnout interventions actually exacerbates the injury.
We also unpacked the exhausting cultural match problem inside the therapy room, exploring the specific physiological toll that translation fatigue takes on a client who's just trying to heal.
Just trying to get better.
Right. And finally, we examined how practices like coping and healing counseling are actively redesigning mental health care through intentionally multidisciplinary diverse staffing and universal telehealth access.
Solving both the trust and cost equations.
Exactly.
Well, before we sign off, we always like to leave you with something to chew on, something that builds on what we've discussed today.
Today, I'd like you to think back to our early discussion on vicarious exposure.
Seeing things happen to others.
Right. We noted how simply witnessing distressing community events triggers the exact same hypervigilance and somatic exhaustion as a direct confrontation. Because the brain's threat detection center cannot always distinguish between a screen and a physical reality.
It feels real to the brain.
Yes. So I want you to consider the modern digital landscape we all inhabit. If vicarious exposure is a documented continuous stressor, how is our 24/7 social media and news consumption quietly acting as a relentless trauma delivery system?
Oh, wow.
Every time you open an app, how many pebbles are automatically dropping into your backpack?
That's a scary thought.
And more importantly, as you go through your week, how can you consciously curate your digital environment to protect your nervous system without disconnecting from the world entirely?
That is a phenomenal question to sit with. Are we voluntarily adding pebbles to our own backpacks just by scrolling?
It's worth thinking about.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As always, keep questioning the world around you, keep learning, and please take care of yourselves. We will catch you next time.